Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson. We're continuing our study of 2 Peter. We're in chapter 2. We're going to finish chapter 2 today by reading verses 17 through 22. And this will bring to a conclusion the description that he gives of false teachers. As we said, the point of the book is to prepare them to deal with false teachers. 1 Peter, written shortly before Peter's death, prepares the church for the external threat of persecution. 2 Peter prepares the church for the internal threat of false teaching. And instead of naming the false teaching that they face in the moment, he does something much more valuable for them and for us, which is describe the characteristics that false teachers of every generation have had. And he has described them as people who are very persuasive, but who ultimately are proven to be following their appetites, not their thoughts, who are following their impulses, not their self-awareness, who are answering to the flesh, not to the spirit. And he's going to continue to paint that picture today. So let's read verses 17 through 22. These are springs without water, mist driven by the storm, for whom black darkness has been reserved. For speaking out arrogant words of vanity, they entice by fleshly desires, by sensuality, those who barely escape, the ones who live in error, promising them freedom while they themselves are slaves of corruption. For by what a man is overcome, by this he is enslaved. For if, after having escaped the defilements of the world by the knowledge of the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, they are entangled in them and are overcome, the last state has become worse for them than the first. It would be better for them not to have known the way of righteousness than having known it to turn away from the holy commandment delivered to them. It has happened to them according to the true proverb, a dog returns to its own vomit, which is from Proverbs 26, and a sow after washing returns to wallowing in the mire. That's a Greek proverb. The peg does not make an appearance, I don't believe, in the book of Proverbs, unless I'm forgetting, a verse. So he's got a Hebrew proverb and a Greek proverb that he turns to end this chapter. There are three notions that he's sharing here at the end. One is he's emphasizing again their arrogance, their sensuality, their vanity, their fleshly desires, all of those things that they are answering to their impulses, they're answering to their appetites, not to their thoughts, not to their souls, so this is emptiness. If we don't believe that, read the book of Ecclesiastes. This is emptiness, but it is appealing because all of us have those impulses and appetites. We have them naturally. God has given them to us. Satan has corrupted them in a sinful world. And we all contain corrupted forms of these initial, perfectly healthy impulses. And so these people are effective in drawing others away in that they are appealing to impulses that we all have, appetites that we all have to varying degrees. And they claim to set them free. We're going to set you free so that you can enjoy these appetites, so that you can follow these impulses. But what you're actually doing is obeying and enslaving yourself. And so there's this bitter irony. And then he describes them as people who have had honest conversions. These are the people that he's talking about honestly believe the truth and follow the truth. And therefore their end, that's the second thing. And the third thing is their end is worse than the beginning. Now he's talked about special judgment earlier in the chapter, reserved for special judgment. And both that passage there in verses 9 through 11, and here at the end of the chapter, it would have been better, this is going to be worse for them, have led people to ask the question, are there levels of hell? I don't know. I don't want to be there at all. Hell is hell. I suspect that the great torture that is added upon the tortures that are just there in hell are the tortures that the rich man in Luke 16 is already suffering, even before final judgment. And it is knowing that it could have been different, knowing that there are people that he could have made a difference for while he was alive and he didn't. And so there's that added torture. If you know what it was to be saved, then you know what you have wasted in hell. And that torture in itself has to be worse than any hotter flames that we might endure. And so, you know, the worst part about it clearly comes from inside ourselves, knowing what we had and what we have lost, and whom we have hurt, whom we have taken down with us. So anyway, that's what I think. I love that in verse 22, he goes to homely wisdom, homespun, cracker barrel wisdom, one from the book of Proverbs, one from the Greek writers, about a dog returning to its own vomit, and a sow after washing returns to wallowing in the mire. So vivid and so effective. One more thing. We're going to study Jude after we study 2 Peter. And I believe that Peter is written first, and Jude has read Peter and tweaks 2 Peter chapter 2. We mentioned earlier that 2/3 of the book of Jude is lifted. Not lifted, but borrowed and polished from 2 Peter chapter 2. And I'll give you an example. He talks about, in verse 17, springs without water, mist driven by the storm. So we get these two examples of the promise of water and not getting the water. So in Jude, we're going to have those two examples given verbatim, and then we're going to get a third, because in Jude, the number 3 plays a significant role, and we have all these groups of 3s. And so to me, when you see Peter is communicating in these vivid images. Jude takes these images then and polishes them further and gives them rhythm that we don't have in Peter, because it's not important to Peter to do that. I don't know why it's important to Jude, but it is. So anyway, that's just another note. We'll come back and I'll mention it in a few weeks whenever we are studying the book of Jude. We'll pick up with chapter 3 next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.